All right, good morning. My name is Jason Ishii, Chairperson of the Authority. I'd like to now call to order the March 6, 2024 Kakaako Authority meeting of the Hawaii Community Development Authority. And the time is now 9 o'clock.
Thanks, Chair. In accordance with section 92-3.7 Hawaii revised statutes, the Hawaii Community Development Authority is holding today's Kakaako board meeting virtually on Zoom. The Zoom link details were included on the meeting agenda. Therefore, members of the public are welcome to join us on Zoom and also at our physical meeting site at the American Brewery Building, 547 Queen Street, second floor boardroom, Honolulu, Hawaii, 96813. The HCDA communication staff is hosting this meeting. Once this meeting begins, everyone will be muted for clearer audio. Board members, if you have any comments or questions, please unmute yourselves to speak. It is important that all individuals clearly state their name each time prior to speaking. This is a public, in-person and virtual meeting, so to prevent any distractions, if you are attending virtually and you are not a board member, staff member, or HCDA's Attorney General, please turn off your video during the meeting. If you wish to provide oral testimony and you're attending virtually, please indicate so by clicking the raise hand button found on your Zoom. If you are attending in person, you'll be called to the front of the room in the order that you signed up. All testimony will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. Your testimony must be related to an item on the agenda. Before you begin your testimony, we ask that you identify yourself and spell your name for the record. When 1 minute is remaining, 1 minute remains will be called out. And when 30 seconds is remaining, 30 seconds remaining will be called out. When time has elapsed, time will be called. After which you will then have 30 seconds to conclude your testimony, and then your audio will be turned on. If you are attending in person, the presiding officer will call the next testifier. Keep in mind that this is an opportunity to share your thoughts with us. If you ask questions during your testimony, neither the board nor the staff is required to provide an answer. If the authority's connection for the remote meeting is lost, the meeting will be recessed until the connection is restored. If the connection cannot be restored within 30 minutes, the meeting will be terminated and the authority will continue the meeting at another notice date. Thank you, Chair.
HCDA board members, please remain visible and audible during the meeting. Also, please acknowledge you are present by either saying here or present. Let the record reflect that the following members are present. Vice Chair Higa.
Present.
Secretary Apo.
Present.
Member Miranda Johnson.
Present.
Member Anderson.
Present.
Member Strice.
Present.
Member Evans. Member Evans. Member Sakura.
I'm here.
You have quorum, Chair.
Okay, we have quorum. For today's meeting, board members will have an opportunity to ask questions or provide comments after an agenda item that has been presented. Individuals from the public who have requested to provide verbal public testimony on a specific agenda item are on standby and will be permitted to provide their testimony respectively. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Board members, are there any comments or corrections to these minutes? If there are no comments or questions, the minutes are approved as presented. Next agenda item, decision making. Considering authorizing the executive director to amend the existing lease with Interior Showplace dated November 11, 2009 for the property located at 956, 958 Queen Street, Honolulu, Hawaii, and identified by Oahu Tax Map Key number 1-2-3-003-0022 to extend the term by an additional 1 year until May 31st, 2025. Ms. Lindsay Leverton, Asset Manager, now will present the staff report. Lindsay.
Good morning, members. This request is located in tab 2 of your packet. You may remember the Interior Showplace lease from a board approval back in July. This is another request from our lessee, Interior Showplace, for the Block P parcel that we acquired from Victoria Ward Limited. This property It's currently leased to Interior Showplace as their warehouse and showroom for an office furniture sales facility and office design company. They wanted to or are planning to relocate their offices, but unfortunately, they're not able to secure the necessary permits, and they're not sure of their timeline for securing those permits. So we last extended this lease in July. The current termination date for that lease is May 31 of this year. But they are coming again for an additional extension just in case their permits are not ready for their alternate facility. Again, they don't have a timeline, so it's uncertain when those permits will be ready, but just to prepare for the future, they're requesting an additional 1 year. So there's no guarantee they would remain the whole year. We do have a 3-month mutual termination clause included in this proposed amendment so that either party, HCDA or Interior Showplace, can elect to terminate that lease sometime within that year. We do include a slight rent increase as part of this proposed amendment. Traditionally, it would be increased at 3% annually. So since their last rent increase was only for a 5-month term, we kept the rent the same to honor that annual increase. But when their extended annual rent term would come up, we would go ahead and effectuate that 3% annual increase. So that is essentially the ask today, is whether we can extend this lease, whether the board approves those terms to extend. We do have the president of Interior Showplace standing by should you have any questions about their process for relocating or any other questions related to this request.
Thank you. And let the record reflect, Mary Alice joined the meeting at 9:06. Welcome, Member Evans. Board, is there any questions for Lindsay on her staff report?
Sure.
Yes, Member Streets.
Hey, I guess since I'm new, I was just curious whether HCDA has plans for the site. I'm just wondering if there's like an opportunity cost, for continuing to extend this lease.
Yeah, I can answer that, Member Streets. We acquired this property, as Lindsay mentioned, from Howard Hughes. We acquired it really for the purpose of developing maybe affordable housing on that property through a developer. At the present time, we're still looking at the options for affordable housing. I mean, when that would occur. So I don't think there's much of an opportunity cost lost with extending the lease for another year. Just because I think if we don't, then we might have an empty building that we're going to have to take care of. This particular, there's actually 4 tenants on this property. Interior Showplace on the Queen Street side and the 2 other tenants on the Halekowila side. The Interior Showplace lease is a true triple net lease. So if we ended up not extending it for this time period, whatever time they need it, we would end up having to, maintain everything on this, and that would be difficult. We have a property management company right now that's managing it for us, but I wouldn't want to not have a tenant in there. I think we were kind of thinking that I think the leases for the 3 tenants on the Halekowila side have like a 2025, I think.
2026.
26,
the latest.
The lease term. So I think we're thinking that we might not be able to do anything substantial with the property until then anyway. And just for your background, memberships, we had acquired this property from Howard Hughes in a kind of a unique transaction. We have floor area in the bank. That's really, the floor area is related to these remnant parcels that we have around Kakaako. They needed some floor area to develop other properties within the master plan area. And so we worked out a deal where I think the appraised value for this was somewhere around 5 million something. or some amount like that. And we had sort of sold them the floor area in the bank, some of the floor area in the bank. Gave them some industrial credits so that, you know, they wouldn't lose the industrial credit for this. And we had, had a combination of cash and non-cash consideration for this. And we ended up paying, I think, $1 million for this, and there was non-cash consideration for the remainder. So it was a pretty unique, you know, deal. And, you know, the floor area in the bank, it's there, but it's not like we can, you know, really it's difficult to value and monetize. But when we can use it, we should use it because, you know, it's not a ready market for the floor area. And we hoping that we might do some similar deals with Howard Hughes in the future. But that was the sort of the unique transaction that we had come up with to acquire a property like that for just a smaller amount of cash consideration and a lot of non-cash consideration. I know that went way beyond your question. but-
No, that's great. Thank you, Director. Good background.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Any other questions, members? If not, is there any public testimony? No public testimony on this one. So members, is there a motion for the board to authorize the executive director to amend the existing lease with Interior Showplace dated November 11, 2009 for the property located at 956 and 958 Queen Street, Honolulu, Hawaii, and identified by Oahu Tax Map Key Number 12-3-003-022 to extend the term by an additional 1 year until May 31st, 2025. Do I have a motion?
Member Higa so moves.
Do I have a second?
Second, Member Apol.
Members, there's any further discussion on this motion? If not, I'll ask Lindsay to take the roll call.
Members, the motion has been made and seconded. On that motion, Member Higa,
Yes.
Member Apol,
Yes.
Member Miranda Johnson,
Yes.
Member Streets,
Yes.
Member Evans, Member
I
Evans,
think you're muted.
I think you're on mute.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Member Anderson,
Yes.
Member Sakota,
Yes.
and Sherry Shee.
Yes,
The motion passes with 8 in favor.
thank you. Next item of the agenda, consider authorizing the executive director to execute a right of entry with the Honolulu Authority for Rapid Transportation for the use of a portion of Halekauwila Street, Cook Street, and Mother Waldron Neighborhood Park, identified by Oahu Tax Map Keys 1-2-1-015-003, 1-2-1-015-019, 1-2-1-030-046, 1-2-1-050-067, 1-2-1-051-039, 1-2-3-003-087, and 1-2-3-004-080 during construction of the Honolulu Rail Transit Project for a period of 5 years. Ms. Leverty will now present staff report.
Members, this staff report is located in tab 3 of your packet. This request from HART relates to the rail project coming through Kakaako. So in preparation, they would like to relocate those utilities in advance of the construction work. As you know, the HCDA does hold title to 51 road remnants scattered throughout Kakaako. Some are very small, some are larger, like the big portion of Queen Street. And a number of those are in the Hart Guideway area. So this request from Hart actually is near the Mother Waldron Park area, so it relates to our road remnants in that vicinity. There is a map in your packet that you can see the colored portions of what we own and then where the rail project would be coming. They do want to put some columns to support the guideway along those areas, one of which would be in our portion of Mother Waldron Park. So eventually we'll need to come to the board for that action kind of further down the line. But right now, they are starting that effort to relocate and do all of that utility work. So we are asking for a 5-year right of entry. It's, longer than the typical 1 year that we can administratively grant. So that's the request today, is for the 5-year right of entry for those areas of our remnant roads. We do have the Hart Project Director, Nate Nettings, online, should there be any questions about, these specific parcels and the work being done in those areas. But generally, this is all, part of the Hart Project. They're doing it across the city. So if we have, let's see, do you have Nate? I'm not sure if he's already.
Robert.
Oh, it's Robert. I can't see. But yeah, if you folks wanted kind of a background.
Yeah, we're letting them in.
Okay.
Robert.
Maybe they can provide a little bit of background, about the project and update. I know it's kind of been a while since we've talked about rail, and Kakaako was kind of the last stop. So.
Nate.
Yeah, Nate?
Sorry. Hi, Lindsay. This is Bob Stelmacher, property agent for Hart, and I have Vance Suda with me. He's the deputy project director. Nate is out today. I apologize for that, but Nate will be able to, or Vance will be able to give an update as if he's Nate. So let's just use our imagination.
Yeah, so just imagine me bald as Nate is, and I'll do my best to give an impersonation of him. So in terms of update of our project, as we all know, segment 1 has been turned over to DTS as of last year, June. That segment is in operation from East Kapolei to Aloha Stadium. Working really well. Their availability is at 99.5%, which is extremely high for the system. Low ridership, but very extremely high availability, which is amazing. Segment 2, we're continuing to work on. This is from Aloha Stadium to Middle Street. Right now, the civil contractor is completing all the station work and guideway. Guideway's basically done. Station buttoning up, doing all the finishing work, cladding. All the nice portion of the station is being worked on currently. Our core systems contractor, who's responsible for all the train controls, all the communication systems, they're working within the stations there, completing all of their installations and testing. Soon we'll have a train up in that segment. I would say within the next 3 or 4 months, we can see a train out there doing some testing, with expected opening in the mid to late 2025 timeframe. Segment 3, which is more relevant to the topic here today, all the utility work is ongoing along Dillingham and through downtown, through that Halakawila area. Contractors there are furiously working on all the utility work, moving things underground, moving underground utilities, making way for the guideway column locations and the station locations. The procurement for the city center guideway and station contractor is ongoing. We are currently in procurement. We are expected to have that awarded later this year in August to October timeframe, depending on how things go. Once that contractor is on board, we're looking at designs within the 2025 timeframe, and then shovel to ground most likely in the late 2025, early 2026 timeframe. So crossing our fingers that procurement is ongoing and we have good bids. And that entire segment from Middle Street all the way to the Civic Center station at the Keoho building area, that's scheduled to be completed in 2031 timeframe. So that's a quick update if there's any questions.
Members, do you have any questions?
Yeah, are there, in the planning, especially for all the stuff where you have to dig in under the ground, provisions in anticipation of perhaps EV discovery? Is there a framework in place now to move
Yes.
that?
Yes, so we have 100% monitoring whenever we're doing ground disturbance. We have cultural monitors that follow the state process. If something were to be found, we do the proper notifications, whether it's to HPD, the coroner's office, and then the cultural and lineal descendants. And then we work through SHPD on what the determination is with the EV, whether it's left in place or relocated.
Okay, second question. In terms of lineal descendants, they are is there any notification in anticipation of moving in, or does notification of lineal descendants only occur after discovery?
After discovery, definitely. Right now, we are looking at doing a supplemental archaeological inventory survey. So we have met with the lineal descendants a couple of times, I would say last month, notifying them of our plan and having their blessing on our plan before we submit to SHPD, which we actually just submitted to SHPD, I would say yesterday.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Uphold. Any other questions?
Member Anderson, please.
Member Anderson?
Hi, does it make sense for us to still own the roads? I mean, wouldn't it be easier if we gave the roads to the city? I mean, the 5-year right of entry is pretty long, and the city's going to be making investments into the infrastructure. Is there any discussion on just providing the roads to the city?
Yes, definitely, Member Anderson, that is our goal as well, is to transfer all of the road remnants. You're correct that the city, they have the, resources, the crews to maintain those roads and, tie them into their future projects as well. That process is fairly lengthy, so it is on our radar. It actually has been something that we've been trying to do for the last maybe 5 years. So the Kakaako Makai land transfer was one major transfer to the city that happened in 2019. The roads were supposed to be the second phase. So we did actually get approval from the city council to transfer the roads, but of course, there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of steps that need to happen before we can do all of the road transfers. So that is something that we intend to do. But it's something that I think will take some time.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
I was just
Member Streets.
curious, so if that transfer hasn't occurred, before the 5-year term that's up for consideration right now, could the director do an administrative extension for the 1 year that you mentioned is possible?
I think it depends on how long that extension is gonna be. If it's gonna be more than a year, then I think we're gonna have to come back to the board.
Yeah, usually, so just in practice, the executive director can execute any right of entry up to a year in length. And then anything that would push it beyond a year, that's when we would come to the board. So even if, let's say, the right of entry was, 9 months, if the person says, hey, I need 6 more months, we would have to come to the board, even though it's kind of a 3-month extension. So generally, I like to go kind of a little bit longer just to avoid having to keep coming back to the board for the same thing. So the 5-year probably is reasonable given their, timeline, but if it happens, sooner, maybe they do the work in 3 years, then, we would just terminate it when it's not needed.
I think the bigger issue, that I guess that you point out is really the dedication of those streets to the city. That's what really I think is important. And we've started some of those discussions, but it is a long process, as Lindsay pointed out. It requires, surveying and other kinds of things. But we have started some discussions.
Okay. Any other questions? Any public testimony? There's no comments or questions? Do I have a motion? Is there a motion for the board to authorize the executive director to execute a right? Sorry? Oh, we do have a testimony from the public?
Hello, for conceding time. My name is Trelor Bauer. I am the great granddaughter of Mother Waldron, and so I am following impacts to the park from where I live in Colorado. I have a couple of questions about what it means for HART to use portions of the park when you grant access to them for this construction, and how will those areas be restored when the work is completed?
Ms. Bauer, thank you for your question. I think I'm going to kind of turn that over to Bob Stelmacher and Vance Suda from HART, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Vance or Robert?
Sure, thank you, Vance. I can take this one.
Go ahead.
So at the corner of the cross street there, the intersection at Mother Waldron on the HCDA owned parcel, there's about a roughly 500 square foot area that's going to be the location of a column. That's the extent to which Mother Waldron will be impacted. The bulk of the park, which I believe is still DLNR owned, is going to be completely untouched. Does that more or less answer your question?
It does for long term with the installation of the column. I'm assuming that when you're doing the work, however, that more than the 500 square feet would need to be accessed for various equipment and installation of that column. And so my concern is just during the actual construction phase, when there is potential for impacts to greater than that 500 square feet, what would be impacted? Is it just vegetation? Is it any of the architecture that's there? And then how would that be restored after the column is completed?
So if we, outside of the column area, if we do disturb anything, whether that's irrigation or planting or anything like that, we do restore all that to as near as possible, the previously existing condition. There's no plan at this time to use any portion of Mother Waldron as a laydown, to my knowledge. So I don't suspect that there will be a request, just because of the nature of the use of the park. But that's really all the information I have at this time. Just so we're clear, though, this right of entry is for utility relocations and archaeological digging. So while we do anticipate digging in that roughly 500 square foot area to do archaeological surveys, the bulk of the work will be in the road or road adjacent.
Great. And then you'll go back in and ask for, I'm assuming it sounds like an additional right of entry for actual construction of the column, since this is utilities focused now.
Right. And so we were hoping that when we go back for, as Vance had explained, the project really moves in two phases, where you do the utility work and then you do the guideway work. And so when we come back to HCDA for the guideway portion, that's when that'll all happen. And then we can have a better discussion, board members, about dedication of parcels or anything like that.
Thank you. I really appreciate the additional information. I know my family members will be relieved to hear that the impact to the park will be limited at this time. So thank you so much for the opportunity to ask my questions.
Thank you. Is there any other public testimony? No. So is there a motion for the board to authorize the executive director to execute a right of entry with the Honolulu Authority for Rapid Transportation for the use of a portion of Halikuila Street, Cook Street, and Mother Waldron Neighborhood Park, identified by Oahu Tax Map Keys 12-1-015-003, 121-015-019, 12-1-030-046, 12-1-050-067, 12-1-051-039, 12-3-003-087, and 12-3-004-080, doing construction of the Honolulu Rail Transit Project for a period of 5 years. Do I have a motion?
Member Higa so moves.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Chair Strauss.
Okay. Members, are there any further discussion on this motion? If not, I'll ask Lindsay to take the roll call. Lindsay?
Members, the motion has been made and seconded. On that motion, Member Higa,
Yes.
Member Evans,
Yes.
Member Apo,
Yes.
Member Miranda Johnson,
Yes.
Member Streets,
Yes.
Member Anderson,
Yes.
Member Sakota,
Yes.
and Sherry Sheehy.
Yes,
Motion passes with 8 in favor.
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you. Next on the agenda is a report of the executive director, monthly report, and other status reports.
Thank you, Chair. The Executive Director's report is in tab 4 of your packets. Just want to highlight a couple of things. This is related to the dog park construction and the Queen Street crosswalk improvements. The construction has started for both projects. I think yesterday, for the Kolowalu Dog Park construction, one of the subcontractors, or one of the contractors was at the park, kind of doing a test build of the rock wall, so we were reviewing the build, to make sure it's complied with the contract specs. The Queen Street crosswalk, project is proceeding. With respect to the Kakaako Street improvements, this is the one that is on for Ilani Y Street. We had received funding for planning for these street improvements, so we held a community meeting on January 11th. There was a good number of businesses that turned out for this informational briefing. It was really a kickoff to let them know that there were surveyors coming to the various properties, and I thought that it was well received. There were a lot of questions. City Deputy Department of Transportation Services, John Lucci, was also there in attendance. And we said that we'd update them as we complete the planning work. So that's it for my Executive Director report, Chair.
Thank you, Executive Director Nakamoto. Members, are there any questions or comments on Executive Director Nakamoto's report or anything that's on tab 4? Not, is there any public testimony? No public testimony? All right, well, thank you for those of you who joined us on Zoom or in person. This concludes our business for today, and the meeting is now adjourned, and the time is 9:34. Thank you.
And we'll reconvene for the next meeting.
We will convene at 10 o'clock for the general meeting.